There is no way I can give this movie a proper review without cursing here and there, especially when it comes to saying the word ass over and over again. Kick-Ass 2 continues with David Lazewiski, or whatever, however you pronounce his last name, who is basically Kick-Ass and is played again by Aaron Taylor Johnson from the first movie. He continues his crime-fighting spree along with Mindy McCready / Hit Girl, played by Chloe Grace Moretz, as he discovers more superheroes that are following in his footsteps, including Night Bitch and Colonel Stars and Stripes, played by Jim Carrey. As this is going on, however, Chris D'Amico, who was the Red Mist in the first movie, played once again by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, aka McLovin, decides to become the first supervillain and wants to get revenge on Kick-Ass for blowing his father up with a bazooka. Thus, he takes on the name of the Motherfucker. Okay, that was corny, but I had to make that sound dramatic some way, but whatever. I was originally going to review the first Kick-Ass as part of Retro Wednesday, but because Netflix took it off instant streaming, I had no way of seeing the movie again, since I haven't seen it since its original theatrical release, and I don't own it on Blu-ray, unfortunately. I'll try to summarize it to the best of what I remember. But basically, Kick-Ass was a surprise for me when it came out. It was really violent, vulgar, something I haven't really seen before. It had great humor, Hit Girl was awesome, and, for lack of a better word, it kicked ass. It was directed by Matthew Vaughn, who would go on to direct X-Men First Class, and was distributed by Lionsgate, but he basically financed the movie himself, which gave him the freedom to do whatever he wanted with it. So now we have the sequel, with Matthew Vaughn not directing it, Lionsgate passing it up, and Universal taking over the franchise. So is it as good as the first movie? It's fun. Okay, it's fun, but it is heavily flawed. One of the reasons why this is not anywhere near as good as the first movie is because the first movie was unique. It was something I haven't seen before in a superhero movie, and this movie doesn't really try to improve on that. What Matthew Vaughn did was he made a really ultra-violent superhero movie that was a lot of fun. This movie feels more like a sequel just for the sake of making one. It suffers too much from been there, done that. And since we've seen the trick from the first movie of really violent stuff, you gotta amp it up for the sequel, and unfortunately this movie doesn't do that. It's also long. The movie could have been trimmed by maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and there is a lot of dragging points throughout the movie. The movie also did not know what tone to take. Sometimes it wanted to be a really comic book-like, over-the-top action movie with comic book-like violence and action. Other times it wanted to be a very gritty, grim, dark, realistic superhero movie along the veins of the Dark Knight trilogy. And I'm sorry, those two tones just don't mesh well together. Pick a tone and stick to it, which unfortunately this movie did not do. I also didn't think that the Motherfucker was a very effective villain. I mean, Christopher Mintz-Plasse did make me laugh at some moments, both intentionally and unintentionally, but he's not that threatening of a villain. He comes off more as a rich brat and a little punk, to the point where Kick-Ass even gives off the best description of him right before the final battle. There's also the stupid subplot involving Mindy, in which he's trying to fit in with the popular girls at high school. It doesn't really go anywhere, and I understand that it's supposed to basically get her out of her hit girl phase and into the real life. I don't know if it's in the graphic novel Kick-Ass 2, but I feel like if you took that subplot out of the movie, it probably wouldn't have been missed. Which leads me into my biggest complaint about the movie, Hit Girl. Now in the first movie, Hit Girl was awesome. She was violent, she was really skilled at fighting, and she did not give a fuck about stuff she said. She basically stole the show. I mean, Kick-Ass was awesome in the first movie, but it was mainly Hit Girl's movie. Every time she was on screen, she owned it. And Chloe Grace Moretz was awesome in the movie. In here, she is barely in the movie. Now, what I mean by barely in the movie is that it's like Batman in The Dark Knight Rises. Bruce Wayne, Christian Bale, is in the movie a lot, but you want to see Batman do stuff and fight crime, and he barely does that. Here, it's the same thing. Mindy's in the movie a lot, and Chloe Grace Moretz is really good in the movie, just like she was in the first movie, but Hit Girl is almost non-existent in this movie. She has one horribly edited action scene in the beginning, and then she pops up again in the final act. That might be a spoiler, but I'm saying this for the sake of saving you guys from disappointment. Now, moving away from the things that I didn't like into the things that I did like, because there were things I did like about this movie. It wasn't a total loss. I may have complained about Hit Girl barely in this movie, but every time she's on screen, she owns it, just like she did in the first movie. And as I mentioned, Chloe Grace Moretz is just as good in this movie as she was in the first movie. The final battle is a bit fun to watch on occasion, and Jim Carrey is good as Colonel Stars and Stripes. Despite the controversial thing he did where he said he doesn't support the violence in Kick-Ass 2, he does a really good job in the movie. Though those are very small things that I liked, because in the end, Kick-Ass 2 is not as special or interesting as the first movie. It suffers from a lot of been there, done that situations, and it never had the level of independence that the first movie had, where Matthew Vaughn made the movie without a studio and then had to find a studio to distribute it. This feels more like a studio film. It suffers from sequelitis just to make a sequel. Saying that, though, it is enjoyable at times, and I don't think the movie is technically bad. It's just disappointing. But given that this was a studio film, I had no expectations for it to be good. So, I don't really recommend you go see it in the theater, but it's not... I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. Watch at your own risk. This is the perfect kind of movie where you rent at home, or you find it on TV as you're flipping through the channels. You watch it and you go, you know, that was alright. I'm glad I saw it. It's not a go-to-the-theater type movie. It's a rent it, watch it, you might enjoy it, you might not kind of movie. So that's my review for Kick-Ass 2. Leave a comment if you've seen the movie. Subscribe to my channel for more movie reviews in the future. Check out my other channel, AlexG8462. Tell your friends about me. This has been The Cinemas with Mr. Robinson. And remember, know it before you see it. See you guys later.